Welcome to the Real Riders Podcast. My name's Simon Josie, and this is a podcast about motorcycling and filmmaking. If this is your first time here, welcome and thanks for listening. Today's episode is the second in our series focused on interviews with directors whose films were chosen for the 2026 edition of the Adventure Motorcycle Film Festival. Our guest today is Mike Smith, whose short film, Prairie Pirates, was screened at the festival, which was held at the end of February in the UK's Lake District. I'll put a link to Prairie Pirates in the show notes. Once again, Clive Barber from the Trail and Adventure Motorbike podcast and I have teamed up to produce and simultaneously release this episode via both our podcasts. Don't forget, the 2027 edition of the Adventure Motorcycle Film Festival has launched, and we are now taking submissions via our FilmFreeway page. Tickets for the festival are not yet on sale, but that's expected to change sometime in July. Keep an eye on www.advmotofilmfest.com and the festival's Instagram account for the latest information. You'll find all the links in the show notes. Don't forget, you can find the Real Riders podcast on Instagram, where I post, amongst other things, trailers for each new episode. And if you want to know what I've been watching recently, I occasionally post about that on Blue Sky. Links to both the Instagram and Blue Sky accounts can be found in the show notes. Finally, if you want to help keep the servers running, pumping out the episodes, you can now support the podcast via Buy Me a Coffee donations. I have a few operational costs associated with hosting and remote recording infrastructure, and any donations go towards paying for those. The link is in the show notes and also in my Linktree, which you can find in my Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube account profiles. Righto, let's get to our talk with Mike.
So tell us where you are now, what you're doing, because you're not at home.
No, I'm currently in Orlando, which is a long ways from Nebraska. I'm at a conference that is like an educational leadership conference. So it's all these kids they're the leaders in their school who are trying to like make their schools feel more inclusive or have better school culture or like celebrate kids who aren't typically celebrated. And so it's like a very culture and climate in the schoolhouse in America is a big conversation. And so this is a group of people that has taken on that responsibility. And so tries to put a lot of structure and ideas and community leaders together. And so I've worked with them for almost a decade, but it's this big conference. Kids are dressed up. You mentioned cowboy hats. It's like the cowboy theme. They're having a rootin' tootin' good time. I've heard it like 100 times. So these kids, I've been yee-hawed and woo-wooed at more than you can imagine, bro. At the end of this thing, I have a cowboy hat. I'm going to bust it out and put it on my head for you. Excellent. I got it, but I got to get out of my bag. But that's where I'm at.
Yeah, but normally we would have found you in Lincoln, Nebraska, which is home, isn't it?
Yeah, Nebraska's home. Lincoln, that's if you don't know like American maps, which I would assume that no one would. Most people, when I travel the world, I say, oh, I'm from Nebraska. And they go, oh, where's that? And then when I travel in America, people ask me, where are you from? And I say Nebraska. And they also say, oh, where's that? And so like most people don't know where Nebraska is. But for those that don't know, which is pretty much everybody, it's in the exact middle of America. Like they exist smack dab in the center. Like it's a flyover state is what they call it.
Yeah, looks amazing though. You do some cool stuff there, which we will certainly get onto. But we were delighted to host you at this year's Adventure Motorcycle Film Festival. And we were just so insanely grateful that you made that massive trip to sit there and watch your own film again for the millionth time. Mike's film, for those of you that weren't at the festival, was called Prairie Pirates, and it was one of the 12 films that, out of 52, that made it into the final selection. So it was a winner. It was one of the winners of our competition. But what was in it for you? Why did you come all that way to join us at the film festival?
Well, there was multiple reasons. One, it's hard to find yourself in a scenario where you get to spend so much time with handsome chaps like yourselves. And so I thought the fish and chips in the company was worth it alone. So that was like, I'm making the trip for that. So once we realized we got that knocked out, there was multiple reasons. One, where I come from isn't always celebrated. Like when people think of America, there's the typical hit list of like New York or LA or, your Texases or your Colorados or your Rocky Mountains or whatever, Route 66. People have their like opinions of it, but Nebraska is typically left out of the conversation. So to get to see a film shot where I shot it and who I shot it with, shown up against films that were filmed in countries that people dream about going to, like the what is it, the TET, the Trans European Trail, something like that. It's just I got to see photos of it and talk to people about it, and it's like I think the beauty of it and just how incredible it is probably something you take for granted in the same way we take so much stuff for granted in the States about the way America can look. But Nebraska is typically left out of all conversations around like how beautiful America looks. Like the prairie isn't typically a place that people are like, you have to see this place. And most people are just driving through Nebraska to get to somewhere else. So one of the reasons I showed up is I've sort of taken this self-proclaimed role of like, I'm going to be a global ambassador for the state of Nebraska, and I want to brag about it everywhere I go. And I love it when people are like, I would love to come kick it in Nebraska with you. And my response is always, anytime. Like, we would love to have you. And so, and we'll make a big deal about it when you show up. And so that's one. Two, I'm a professional storyteller. And this is actually like the first film I've ever made. It was my first attempt at it. When it made it into this Vanna Motorcycle Film Festival, which was one that was back in the States, they said they emailed something about laurels, and I had to Google what is a laurel and why are they relevant to film festivals. And so I didn't even know what I didn't know back then. And so, and I still, there's a lot you don't know, but I always end up on a stage somewhere talking to people about kind of chasing their wild ideas and shooting your shot and like putting yourself in that position where like, you're uncomfortable and you don't know exactly what's going to come from it, but like that's where the best stuff typically is. And so when I had this story-ish and I had this idea-ish, and I thought I've filmed a lot of content, I've told a lot of stories, I've been in a lot of different mediums, but I've never made a movie. And so the sort of cheapest way to make something that was like a movie was to make it like a documentary, but not a documentary. Make it like that fine line of like, did this happen? Did it not? Was it a movie? Was it not? Is like way easier to pull off than a bunch of actors and actresses and a lot of locations and things. And so I wanted to make something that was really lighthearted, didn't take itself so serious. I found also, to be very honest with you, I found in the world of motorcycle films, they are all pretty serious and there's like a kind of serious tone to them. And it kind of, I found or felt like maybe shooting something that the goal was to not take itself serious and to be a joke. And the thing wasn't like, you can tell people when they watch it at first, they're like, are they making fun of themselves? I'm like, of course we're making fun of ourselves. Like the whole thing was a joke and everybody was in on it. And so I wanted to make something that felt different from all the other films. And I think that that's what kind of made it stand out. And probably part of the reason why we got selected, I hope, was it was just different from everyone else's too. And so I wanted to, that was another goal, was to do something unique in a place where I thought I had an opportunity to do it.
Well, I think that's the beautiful thing. You mentioned story, and somebody asked me the other day, said, you know, what sort of films have been successful? What kind of film do I need to make and submit to your festival for it to be selected? And I said, it seems to be the films, certainly our judges seem to like, are the ones that do tell a great story, whether it's serious or I think the nice thing about your film is I must have watched it about 10 times, and you pick up on different, quite nuanced, very funny things. It's 9 minutes long, so it's an easy watch. But yeah, I've watched it quite a few times and picked up different things each time I've watched it. So yeah, I think it was a massive success from that perspective. But you said it's your first film. The kind of stuff you do at home, you've created a thing called The Bay, which I'll get you to tell us about. You're a radio host on 93.7 The Ticket, Weekly Disrupt. There we go. That's my American accent for you. I promise not to do it again.
It sounded great. That was good. It was good.
But you got, The Bay is a skate spot. It's a coffee shop. It looks like a huge skate park as well. Music, and you do all kinds of different brilliant things in there. Tell us a little bit more about The Bay.
Yeah, so The Bay, I founded it in 2010, and it originally started out as a skate park inside of our local mall. And so you know how, like, I don't know what mall culture is like, I suppose, in your world, but
most of them are closing down over here.
100%. Yeah, same. So you have all these empty spaces that already exist. There's already heating and plumbing and electricity and all these like mechanisms built in. So I was like, okay, where do kids already go? Where do families already go? And so my first skate park was actually in between like a Sears and a Radio Shack. And both of those are like rest in peace. They no longer exist. And so we were in a local mall from like 2010 to 2012, and we couldn't stay open past the mall's hours. And so we moved into a warehouse in 2012, and it started as the skate park. And then once we finished that and opened, we kind of looked at the rest of this giant space, and we just chipped away at different crazy fundraisers that we could talk about for days, and like stupid stuff, skateboarding across the whole state of Nebraska, which is like 420 miles. I did that like 3 times. I don't know what the kilometers of that is. Somebody Google or AI, somebody smart fact check us here. But yeah, it's a long ways. And so I did a lot of creative things, and our team did a lot of really loud, big stuff. So then we got to work with a lot of big brands. But the Bay grew into this skate park with a coffee shop, and then, fashion was added and music was added, and we turned it into a public high school, actually. And so that's what the one in Lincoln, Nebraska has, a high school inside of it. So kids can, they go to school there, they get their education that's tied to our public school system, and they study a lot of entrepreneurship skills. So they're learning things like they put on a festival called the Skate Art Music Festival. So they learn like how to run a business, and they run these business fairs. They get paired up with mentors. Like, it really does kind of connect a lot of the aspects of business to their education. It's incredibly cool. And there's another one opening 45 minutes up the road in Bay, Omaha. So we've scaled it to other places. And so founded that in 2010. It's a fantastic organization. It's doing incredible stuff for kids in Nebraska. Every time people see it or, hear about it, they can't believe that it's in a place like Nebraska, because it just doesn't kind of fit the bill. But it's probably one of the coolest places on earth for kids. And I tell people all the time to check it out. It's fantastic.
And you run it as a nonprofit as well, which is even more incredible.
Yeah, it's a nonprofit. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's like everything from grant funded to private donors to businesses. There's a lot of folks that really have gotten on board and believe in it. It's 15 years old now. And so it's incredible. I no longer run the day-to-day world. And so I'll always be the founder and always be its biggest champion, but I no longer, it's like at that place where it's a real company now. It needs to have like a real responsible adult at the helm. And I try to not fit into that role as much as I can. And so founder is the best title for me, for sure there.
We're going to come on to biking and filmmaking in a minute, but I just wanted to give people a picture of what you do and who you are. And obviously Simon and I have met you at our festival, and you bumped into Simon again at the Lisbon Motorcycle Film Festival as well, which was great. But you am I correct in saying that obviously you need an income, and you get most of your income from doing inspirational, motivational speaking?
Yeah. I think, we all have kind of sort of diversified portfolios if you're a sort of a storyteller in this world. And so I make video content that lives in schools, and that's the conference that I'm at here. And so there's that part. And then a lot of speeches and speaking. And so that's either in corporate settings or education settings or nonprofit settings. Part of why this is so fun for me is the space that I want to speak in the most is like the travel and adventure sort of tourism industry. And so being able to be a filmmaker who's had an international film shown in different festivals gives me an opportunity to speak about telling stories of unexpected stories in unexpected places, because a lot of places are trying to market their business or market their town or market their state, and it might be an overlooked place. And so I love talking about the road less traveled. And so that's part of the reason that I came out to the festival too, and submitted films and wanted to be a part of it, was it fits that sort of storytelling narrative.
Yeah, one thing I've taken out of what you do is this your weekly. I don't know if you're still doing it actually, but you had a weekly radio show called Weekly Disrupt or Disrupt Weekly, and I really like the idea of that. Getting back to skateboarding, when I was a skateboarder in my teens and well into my 20s, I had this dream that my generation would grow up and there'd be some architects and they would start building buildings that would have like 15-foot radius banks on the side of the building and things you could drop in off. And I thought that would be so cool when us skateboarders grew up and started.
Started becoming the lead designers and architects.
Exactly, yeah. And things like that. But it's you talk a lot about disruption and the people that have impacted other people's lives. And I guess from that, it's this kind of almost, because obviously a lot of kids, we're, certainly in Britain, we're pushed into the, you want to be a doctor or a dentist or a lawyer or whatever it is. And actually that one mold fits very, very few kids. I mean, let's face it, the geeks have literally taken over the world. That's one level of disruptor that's probably not very positive, but it's that alternative lifestyle. Get the goths, get the weirdos, get the punk rockers to do some fabulous imaginative stuff and change the world that way and make a living out of it at the same time.
I speak about it like this often. There's this very cool book which I always make the joke, like, if you don't read it, just go ask AI about it because it'll give you the breakdown in like 2 seconds. But this book, it's called The Third Door. And it describes sort of like success in life and success in business, is the way he uses it, is like getting into a nightclub. And there's sort of three paths that you can take to get into this place. And the first path is the regular line, which is what you kind of described: the doctor, the dentist, the lawyer. Like, you've got to get the great grades to go to the right college, to get the right degree, to have the happy life. And if you follow that, like, it's a prescribed way to be successful, but you need the regular line. You also want like your doctor to go through that path. You don't want your doctor to be like, hacked 6 years off med school, like, let's do this surgery. Like, no one's going to that doctor. And so you need that. And so there's that line, and it has its value. But it's also, I always try to tell people, it's also the loudest and the one that's telling everybody how you're supposed to get in. It's the only line that does it, where it's like, you have to do these things to get in here. So when you leave that line, there's always going to be that group of people that's like, get back in line. You're crazy. Like, you can't start over. Don't start your film festival and turn it into a business. Like, you're nuts. You know what I mean? Like, there's always going to be that resistance when you get out of the regular line. Then there's the VIP door. Your parents are rich. The opportunities are abundant. You're not worried about it. Maybe your grandpa was the founder or inventor of something, or your mom and dad are famous, whatever. There's the VIP door. And people sort of either get resentful and bitter and think, oh, geez, must be nice, when it's not us. But the truth about the VIP door is that's the one that changes the most lives. Like, it gives the most, funds the most, it's asked the most of in so many different ways. But, and this comes from working with kids for so long, we all say it's not what you know, it's who you know. And for kids that have less opportunity, the more kids that they meet and have a genuine relationship with in a different social class, it changes their entire trajectory. They get jobs at these people's businesses. They get to go on trips and opportunities to see life done differently. And so you can't, if a kid's going to get out of their life environment, they have to literally see life done differently. And they can't always just be like a tourist in that world. They have to have like relationships in that world. So it's critically important that the VIP line is accessible, and kids is the best way. Then there's the third door. And the third door is like down the alley, past the dumpster, around the corner. You got to knock on it and like talk your way. Whoever opens it, like, you got to add value and kind of bounce your way through. And that's for like the hustlers and the entrepreneurs and the scrappers and like the creative kids. And what you're talking about is like, more kids in this world want to take that third door in to be successful. They want to create their own vibe, their own brand, their own thing, their own story, and go find a way for themselves. And so our high school that we created, everything we do, I really feel like is helping that third door kid kind of navigate some of the decisions and skills and habits and people to follow. And so I get really excited about talking to kids about taking the unconventional path, because it's the one that deep down, a lot of us want to do it. We want to start something, create something, be our own boss. And so inspiring kids early to shoot that shot is something I really love to have that conversation with kids, for sure. And yeah, as you can tell, I could go forever.
No, that's amazing. Let's get back to little Mike then. So what kind of background did you grow up in, and when did you get into motorcycling?
Yeah. So I grew up in Rapid City, South Dakota, which isn't far from where we filmed the film at. It's kind of north of it. And grew up a poor kid, never had a dirt bike as a kid. Like, that wasn't like in our stars. But I was like your classic, it's funny that the 90s are back, but I was like classic 90s kid, like did middle school and most of high school in the 90s, and like graduated in 2001. And so got to be like you go home and the streetlights come on, the neighborhood just is like always out playing. Like, that was like my childhood. And so everybody grew up doing everything back then. Like, somebody had a skateboard, somebody had a dirt bike or a BMX bike that you could ride. Everybody played football one weekend, and you played basketball, or you were into karate or jujitsu. Like, we all kind of did all the things, and we were all involved in all the after school activities. But before high school, my parents moved us to this farm town with no stoplight. So I went from this like pretty decent sized town to like, 40 kids in your class, 2,000 people in the whole town. You're like 3 hours from a real city kind of a thing. And so we moved to the middle of nowhere. And so that really shaped my sort of like ability you learn how to turn a wrench in a place like that. You learn how to build your first ramp in a place like that. Cause like, I try to tell people, when you move to like the country in a small town, you have access to a lot of things because it's like a small place and everybody sort of gives you free reign of it. And when you're in a city, you kind of, everything's a little bit more contained, and it's in your house or it's at your place, and it's like a little bit more controlled. And so I felt like we had run of this whole tiny little town, and our friends were everywhere from the country to wherever, but we would do and did a lot of stupid things that really turned me into the human that I am today. What I realized was, and this is early, was there's always like that person in the group who like comes up with the idea, or somebody has an idea, but then somebody has to be the one that's stupid enough to be like, and here's exactly how we're going to do it. And like,
that was you, wasn't it?
Yeah, you like force everybody into the problem. Like whether it was your idea or not, somebody had it. Now we're all going in. And I've always enjoyed being that person. I played basketball and was a point guard. And so like, was the guy that really facilitated the whole thing. And so I enjoyed that part in it. And so that's why this film was fun, because it was the same way. But little Mike was always up to shenanigans and enjoyed creating the chaos and then coming up with a good reason to try to get away with it. Was definitely what little Mike was up to.
So when did bikes come into your life then? I'm assuming it was dirt bikes.
Started with road bikes. A friend of mine, TJ, who's the friend's garage that is from the film. So this guy TJ is like, loves bikes, loves old bikes, loves, fixing them, finding them, and was really on like a cafe racer kick at that time. And so got an old Honda, like a 78 Honda, and like a CB 750, flipped it, and then went on like the iconic rides you do in America, like did like in Asheville, there's this like insane road that's like the curviest road, and like I can't even remember what mountain range it is or what the ride's called, but it's like there's like photographers posted up on the side of the road.
Is it something that Tail of the Dragon or something?
Exactly.
Yeah,
yes, it's exactly it. So we did it in like a monsoon, like a downpour, rained so hard my cell phone was ruined because it was in my pocket. It was like with water, like the sketchiest thing in my life. There's like photographers still taking pictures. It's like insane. And so rode like a lot of street bikes across America, these iconic missions that were just like, sit on your ass and ride for hours in a straight line on pavement. You know what I mean? And like did the thing. And so, but Nebraska has a lot of open space and a lot of places to play. And so started getting into like dirt bikes, but I like old stuff, old cars, old trucks, old whatever. And so old motorcycles. And so got an old dirt bike, and it was like day one, kick one. I was like, oh, I'm in. Like, that's it. Like, it's like a different thing. And so really started just taking advantage of the relationships I have, the places I know, Nebraska as a whole, and rode a lot in a lot of places. But a friend of mine texts me coming from Colorado, which is right by Nebraska, also the middle of America. And he texts me and he said, I just bought a Honda Monkey, like the little thing. And he was like a 9-hour car ride away from me and was like, just bought this. I'm going to ride it back to New York. Do you want to go with me? And that's like half of America. And I was like, and he's going to ride a Honda Monkey. And so I had my big bike, but I was like, what? I don't have anything stupid enough to go with this monkey, but I had this 1986 Honda 200 XR. So I was like, I guess I'll take that. So I was like, I'll meet you in a couple of days. So he met me. So he rode his Honda Monkey and I rode a 1986 Honda XR, like thousands of miles.
Is that the one that's in the film?
It wasn't. And the only reason it wasn't was because here's why it wasn't. This is what happened. I was driving out to the film, didn't strap the bike that I did the New York trip well enough to the back of my vehicle, dumped the whole thing, destroyed it. Next day, go on Facebook Marketplace, find some farm kid selling a Honda, bought the bike from him, like pulled in, racked it up, and then drove out the next morning. And then Brady bought his bike off a farm kid too. Then his bike like never worked. But so it was like a similar bike, but I totally like ratchet strap failure on my way out of town and dumped my own bike. So it's so stupid. So now I have two of them sitting in the garage.
Well, I did notice in the film, one bike hasn't got the front number board on.
So it blew off because I filmed it on different days, and one day it flew off when we were driving, and I was like, only people who watch it a bunch of times will notice it. Yeah. But that's one of those things. Yep.
Yeah, brilliant. We should talk about the film, Simon. Have you got any questions, mate? Sorry.
Did you want me to contribute? I'll just sit back and listen. I don't mind. So I was going to start with a fairly serious question, Mike, and I'm going to prompt you to try and tell me what you told me when we spoke in Lisbon, which is, I know that you had a very deliberate approach to the film, and you wanted to capture the audience's attention and interest, and you wanted to start the film in a certain way. And the very first word of the film was a very deliberate choice. Can you tell us what that word was and why you used that word?
Yeah. And so the conversation we had, and part of it goes back to, I watched multiple kind of motorcycle film festival films and saw the tone was very documentary focused. Like a person went on a journey and then told that story. And typically there was either a traumatic experience happened or something serious in their life and they had, overcoming it. And then their motorcycle journey happened. And so I found that it was very like, I went on this experience. I took this trip. I did these things. And part of the world of storytelling, you learn quickly especially when you're speaking to audiences, the most powerful word, especially when you're talking to an audience, is not I, but the actual most powerful word is you. So when I'm up in front of people, I try not to say, and then I grew up here and I did these things. What's actually more powerful is to say, you and it's more putting the other person or the person watching the story at the center of the film. So when I started the movie, the first line of the movie was, that one motorcycle story you'll tell a million times. Well, you're catching me in the middle of one of mine. So before I even referenced myself, I've already said you 3 times. So I wanted it to feel like you were now in on this journey with me. And it wasn't like you're watching this trip that I went on. It was like, no, you're going on this thing with me as we go. And that was how I hoped to make it feel more like a movie than a documentary, was to kind of use some of that, but I intentionally used you versus I.
How scripted was this film? Did you actually write the script or kind of have a vague idea and just see how it went?
No, so I'm serious when I say that Brady bought that Kawasaki from a rancher kid who was like selling it because he got his girlfriend pregnant and he had to let the bike go. And so Brady bought it on Facebook Marketplace and a kid in Wyoming on his way to town. And I was like, it has to be this Kawasaki. He's like, there's this Honda that's like from the 80s. It's in great shape. And I was like, it's a Nebraska story. We can't have 2 Hondas. We didn't even know Jim's story at this point. And so I was like, it can't be. I had no idea about Jim's Kawasaki story at this point. And so I was like, you have to get a Kawasaki. It's Nebraska. There's a Kawasaki plant. Kawasaki and Nebraska are like synced. So he gets this Kawasaki. The clutch didn't work. First gear was gone and the kickstart fell off day 1. So like every time I'm pushing his bike, it was real, like it would stop. So we got so sick of it that we were like, just don't shut it off. Like once we get it going, he would just drive in circles while we would talk to the film crew about what we were going to do next. But there's so much footage of him just like looping around and around and around while we're trying to talk. So every day the script changed so much that the kids that was supposed to be the producer was like mad because at one point he was like, this isn't how you make movies. And I was like, well, this is how I'm making this movie. And so it was, the script kept changing because we filmed it kind of backwards. And so like the last part of the movie, I knew the moon, that moon shot when like we're driving through the prairie and there's like the moon shot at the very end. That's the harvest moon. And I knew exactly what day that moon was going to be in exactly that part of Nebraska. Like I wanted that shot specifically. So I knew we needed to be in this place called Toadstool on that specific night. So that shot happened, but we couldn't get Brady's bike running. Like if we would have had his bike going, we would have both been in that part and I would have used other shots in other places, but we didn't have his bike. So we filmed all the stuff where it was like we had gone our separate ways. At that point was the first thing we filmed. So I was like, sorry, bro, like I'm stealing the greatest scenes of the movie. You don't get to be a part of this, but we couldn't get his bike running. So when we actually started the bike in the movie, that was like real. Like Jim saved Brady even being in the movie because we didn't have a working bike. So like we really started the bike. That was our real reaction where we were like, oh God, like the movie's on now. And so like everything where now it's like, okay, we're using plot 2. And then I didn't know that the history of Kawasaki started in this little small town in Nebraska. And nobody in Nebraska knows this story. Everybody thinks it started in Lincoln, Nebraska, at this plant. And it didn't. It actually started at this like Mason's Auto Supply. Jim tells the story. But when he tells the story, and you saw it, Simon, in Lisbon, I did not exaggerate how Jim is or who Jim is or what Jim is like. I did it exactly as it is. And once Jim gets going, he's gone and it's going and he just tells it. And so the film guys were looking at me like, what do we do with this? And I just kept going. So we ran out of hard drive space. Like we just filmed the thing until it was like, just let him talk. So he tells this whole story, but the history of Kawasaki really started in a small town. And he really does have one of the first bikes ever. And it wasn't called Kawasaki. It was this other brand that Kawasaki bought called Maguru. And he has like one of the first bikes. And so it's a very cool story. It's a very cool Nebraska story for sure.
I do wonder if the real story is actually better than the story you made up.
Oh yeah,
It's like,
it's
a comedy there.
It totally is, and that's what we kept saying was like the floating down the river was a nuanced thing to film yourself floating down the river. There was a moment where Brady, the other guy in it, he was like, "What do you want me to do?" And I was like, "You have to let it go." And he's like, "That's a terrible plan." And I was like, "You got to just full send." And he goes, "That's not a plan." And I was like, "I know, but you have to." I was like, "I don't know what else to tell you, man, but you just gotta let me go." And he let go, and I just spun out of control. Just at the first take was like, there was like these women in lawn chairs up the beach watching it, and you can just hear them in the background screaming like, "He needs help!" Like he needs help. And so it got so bad, I finally jumped off the bike, and the bike was like falling off the raft, and I was like trying to save the bike from going in the river. And finally, Brady and the crew caught up to me, but I had to like run down the river while it was going because like you had no other choice. So we learned a lot. Take one, we learned a ton on the first take, but we really tried to. I pushed it with, "Hey, we're going to narrate this thing from the river, floating down a river." Like that was a huge task. We had to build the raft. The film crew had to figure out how to stabilize the camera so it looked right. But there was there was multiple shots where like I really let go, and it was like, however this goes down this river, this goes. But it was fun. It was really fun.
So the quality of the film is really, really good. It looks like a professionally made film, and I'm thinking he's hired a massive crew, spent a fortune making this film. But then you told me that wasn't the case. Tell us about the people that made the film with you.
Yeah, so unbelievable crew. And I feel bad, and they'll know this. Like, I don't really know the difference between a director and a producer in this role and that role and who does what. And so I was like, the squad was amazing, but everybody who touched it and everybody who was a part of it was from Nebraska. So that was really cool. Brady was the only like kid from Wyoming, but everybody else, from the soundtrack to the first edit to the final edit, everybody that was a part of it was from Nebraska. There was a crew, I think there was 4 of them that all live in Los Angeles, and that's their profession. So they're trying to make movies, they're trying to bust into the industry. So they really like, this is what they do. And so Ryan was the kid who was a director with me. He knows that crew. He's roommates with some of them. And so he put the squad together. And so a lot of films, it's like a GoPro or a tripod or whatever. And so it would take 4 hours to set up the rig on the truck every day. So to get the camera and the gimbal set up, but we were in a new location every day. So every day it was the first thing we did was 4 hours of set up the camera so we could get these shots driving, these certain shots. And so I had no idea. I was like, "Can't you just sit in the back of the truck and shoot it?" And they were like, like that was the idiot in me. That's what I thought. And it was like, they were like, absolutely not. So the crew itself understood cinema. And that was really important to me, was I kept telling them like, this needs to break a different barrier than documentary. People need to think it feels like a movie and forget that it's a kind of a mockumentary. And so there were certain shots that we really went for, but there's all these fun little things where like there's one scene where it's the last scene where Brady and I are on the hill, and it's like when we go our separate ways, it's like the music's really intense, and then it cuts to this. And what actually breaks the third wall is there's a fly that buzzes by the camera, and you can hear it go like, and like that's the noise that like breaks you from music montage back to reality. And so when we were like editing the sound, he was like, "Hey, what do you think about this fly buzz?" I was like, "Make that the transition." It was like, how much can we break people from like the reality of I'm in a movie to like, oh, I'm watching something that's fake to something that's real. And so the soundtrack, we wrote the songs and we sang the songs. I'm like singing in the background.
No
It's
way.
my friend. Oh yeah, my friend like played every instrument, wrote his wife
Wow.
did the final edit, and he did all the audio. So like if you listen to the lyrics of the songs, they go with like what's happening in the movie, and it's like a whole custom everything. So yeah, it was really fun to do. It was fun to like have these little like nuggets for
It's
people
amazing.
who are a part of it.
So, Mike, I'm struggling a little bit here because Jim, who's sort of like the third star, if we can use that term in the film, he is such a pivotal part of the film. Are you telling me that you didn't know about him before you started off making this film?
Absolutely. 100%. I met Jim because of the film, and he would tell you the same thing. And so here's what people have to realize, and you guys know this too. I mean, the vintage bike collectors, this is why I called it Prairie Pirates. Like the guys that have the treasure and like really hold the keys to it, they're not doing very many podcasts and out talking. They're like buried behind a like a Craigslist username that none of us can find. And they only kind of know each other because you got to call their landline. You want to talk to Jim? You call it landline. You know what I'm saying? And so like I used as much real stuff as we could from it, but I didn't know Jim had the fleet. I didn't know any of this. I just knew that my friend TJ was like, "Oh, I got a bike collector. You got to hear about this guy." And then TJ told me he had all these bikes and he was selling them. And I was like, "Oh, we got to tell this guy's story." Like somebody professional. I called like a newspaper in our town. I was like, "You guys got to tell this Jim story. He's great." Nothing. I didn't know how to give it legs. I didn't know the Kawasaki tie. I think if I would have known that and called people and been like, "You wouldn't believe this story," but we hit record and Jim's like, "Kawasaki started right here." And all the camera guys are looking at me and Brady looks up at me and we're all looking at each other and we're like, "Is this true?" And so I'm looking at this guy and I'm like, "Okay, the bike doesn't run. What the hell are you talking about? This is gold, but I don't know what the movie is." So like I really learned it like while we all learned it together. And so that's why like a lot of it is very much how it happened, and like that's why I tried to keep the integrity. When I said to Brady, I messaged him and said, "Hey, I've got this guy. He's a bike collector. I want to shoot this movie." His exact response was, "Mike Smith, I've been waiting my whole life for this, bro." And that's his exact line in the movie.
That's what he said.
He was like, "What do you want me to say?" And I was like, "That's your exact line." And he was like, so I tried to keep it as true as I could, but make it feel like a movie.
So, because I'm just thinking now, and if you kind of talked a little bit, and you mentioned it, it's a mockumentary, but the way fact and fiction weave together through the film, because Jim, he's not some crazy actor you pulled out of LA or somewhere. He's real. His story's real. That's all real. All his bike collection's real, right?
Yeah. Well, but here's what's funny is those weren't Jim's bikes. An hour up the road is this other guy named Chris. And Chris, that was his fleet of bikes. And Chris was the guy that drops Brady off when he's hitchhiking. So when Brady hitchhikes and a truck pulls up and they shake hands, that's Chris. And Chris has one of the Maguru bikes too from the early days. And those two are both collectors and have these insane. So Chris's bikes, because Jim had already sold his bike by the time we started filming. So we used some of Jim's, but some of Chris's. And that whole scene where we show Chris's bikes, but those are Jim's. It was actually a daytime shot, but we shot it at 2 a.m. So we were shining lights through the windows and made it feel like the sun was beaming off the bikes, but that was actually a 2 a.m. shot. Right. But that was a whole other bike collector's fleet. So like, that's what I mean is like, you think there's a bike collector and then an hour down the road, there's this other guy doing the exact same thing, but it's like a little bit different focus. And so that's how it's like, you don't know these guys until you get to know you got to know the guys to get to know the guys, or you got to be buying and selling bikes to find them. And so I had no clue who these dudes were. And then we show up and start filming their stuff. And it was like, you're just unlocking more and more treasure and cooler stories the deeper you go.
Yeah. I mean, Jim is so real. And I had the pleasure of meeting them in Lisbon. And, when you did your sort of Q&A on stage and you threw an answer to Jim, and it was such a meta moment, right? Because he stood up and he was just like reciting his whole story, everything about Kawasaki. He was going to all the details, just like, this is like a joke within a joke within a joke. It was gold. And I was thinking, how many people in the audience really understand what's going on here? This is such a privilege to witness. Yeah, I thought it was so cool.
That was one of my favorite moments from the whole thing. That's why people don't understand, like, is Jim real? Is he fake? And I was like, no, I shot it as real as it gets. And the edit of Jim was about as Jim as you can be, for sure.
So that leads me to the next question, which is, is Brady a real person?
Okay, so if you watch Brady, the only thing, if you follow Brady, and Brady will watch this too, if you followed him on Instagram, he owns a motorcycle company called Go Fast, Don't Die. And so all Brady does in the real world when he's not on his motorcycle is he's 100% posting videos of himself working out. And that is what he does. And in the movie, when you cut to Brady and you first meet Brady, he's like, what am I going to be doing? And I was like, working out. So he's doing kettlebell the whole take, but he had to do it many takes. Like we did that for a long time. And so he just kept pounding through it. But Brady's in fantastic shape. And he was working out through the thing, but that is Brady to a T. Like he's wild. He's a CrossFit jiu-jitsu guy who rides, Harleys and anything, but he's very much a part of that, like, motorcycle culture. But no, I mean, Brady, Mike Smith, I've been waiting my whole life for this call, bro, and working out and his exact aura was Brady to a T. Like he really is that guy.
On Instagram, he is Brady till death with a TIL death.
Yeah.
He does some great. His brand is lovely. Actually, Go Fast, Don't Die. He does some very cool T-shirts and the like. So check him out. And so he's a very cool guy.
So, Mike, I know you're already a published author, man of many talents and all that, but you're just about to publish another book. Do you just maybe want to outline what that book's about?
So it's called Designing a Third Place. And so this concept of, especially in the age of AI, this idea of loneliness epidemic, people, there's the disconnection in the world today. And this, like, now you have AI kind of artificially taking away some of the roles and responsibilities that people used to have. And so there's sort of this world of like the human experience and the digital experience. And everyone is screaming, we need to be a community again. We need to get back together. And so places that have kind of historically helped us do that as a community are called third places. And so home is your first place, school or work is your second place. This third place is like the pub that you go to that everybody knows who you are. And when you don't show up, they miss that you're there. It's the rec center we all had as kids that our parents would drop us off in and be like, I don't want to see you for like 5 hours. And the staff there kind of ran the show. But it was like, we all had these places we could sort of go. And kids largely lost their third place. There isn't a lot of places that adults let their kids run. So that's why they ran to the corners of the internet. That's why kids today all have their little weird internet friend niche group, heroes, idols. And they're like, you don't follow so-and-so on some platform that none of us adults use. And so they are really in a digital third place. And so I'm writing a book called Designing a Third Place. And the goal is to help communities build and create third places for their community with the things that they have. It's the same thing we did at the Bay. And so I've done it from a abandoned mall to, abandoned community centers to 3-story parking garages to empty parking lots. There's ways to create these spaces that largely young people need. And everybody says, oh my God, this empty warehouse, wouldn't it be cool if we did something with it? But then nobody knows how to kind of put it together. This book is hopefully going to be a playbook to help folks realize, hey, that abandoned wing of the mall, it's not so hard to do the thing that you think it is. Let me show you how. Oh, that 3-story parking garage, it's a pain in the ass in the middle of your creative district. I bet you it's not. Like, we can show you how to turn it into something that's really interesting. And so the goal is to inspire communities to do it for themselves. So many folks were like, come to my town and do your thing in my town. But one of the chapters is called No Out of Town Heroes. And it really is this idea that I can't ride into your town and solve your problems. That's not authentic. Like, that's not how it works. So someone in your town needs to be that person who's willing to like put it together because this is your town. And so it's showing people how to kind of like stop waiting for someone to show up and do it and go out and create it for themselves. So it's hopefully a playbook with a little bit of do's and probably a lot more don'ts on how to get it there. But it's hopefully shows people the funding mechanisms, the players that it takes, kind of the culture you need to build if kids are going to actually want to show up to this place. But yeah, so it's hopefully something that communities find valuable.
That sounds amazing, because that's the thing. I've got 3 boys, 17 up to 26. And I keep saying to them, look, do something now. Do something with your friends. You've got nothing to lose. Try something, make something happen. I've left it until my bloody 50s and 60s to actually, do stuff myself. And it's interesting, we even got somebody moaning about something at our film festival. And it's like, well, we're not the fucking BBC. We're not NBC. We're just a couple of guys having a go at something.
Totally. What's great, though, is the thing that I always look at that in those moments where you guys are at, after your first one, which, somebody who went to yours, the Lisbon Film Festival, the Vienna Film Festival, and then went to the one in Italy. I also went to the Cinematic Festival the week after I saw you in Portugal. You did an absolutely fantastic job. And the thing that is so interesting now is people have expectations of you, which is like, that's why you got the feedback you got, is they have an expectation of you. And most of the time, we expect things to be shit. You could, like, Simon, you're a tough get. And so you're kind of start with Simon probably thinks it's shit from the jump. And so if you have like something that people already have expectations of, like, you've already done the hardest part, because like they think you've got something valuable. Now they want to see it be great. So I always look at those moments as that's more of a compliment than not, because people expect this thing to be something. And it is. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was wonderful.
Yeah, we'd certainly. We enjoyed it. We're very proud of it, aren't we? That's why we're doing it again. It's going to be even bigger this year. It's going to be better this year, not necessarily bigger, but we're going to do, hopefully, photography exhibition in there. bit of a bike
Very cool.
show.
Yeah.
We're going to have a proper sort of party night on the Friday night, free pizzas and all that kind of stuff.
Well,
So
sorry,
should be good.
Clive.
Go on.
Me walking in on you doing shots. What's not real party about that on Friday night?
Nobody was upside down holding anyone's ankles. Was
No,
the issue.
exactly.
There
It
was
was,
none of that. I was waiting for that. I got none of that.
You flew into Manchester, didn't you?
Yep.
And you had this amazing idea. You're going to pick up an old dirt bike, ride
Man.
across the country up to Kendal, the Lake District. But I felt really bad because I was sending these messages. I didn't want to seem too negative. I was going,
I tested the waters. I hit a few folks up and tested the waters. You know what I mean? So like, I kind of got a read for like, oh, hey, there might be like there's some rules. There's some things you got to pay attention to is what I thought. But when I realized I was in trouble was I land in Manchester. I go to the car rental thing and I go to get my car and I look at the kid and I was like, oh, hey, I need a truck. And he looks at me and he's like, oh, we don't have trucks. And I just go, but he like points to like these like mid-sized SUVs. And I look at him and go, oh, dude, I'm going to put an old dirt bike in the back of that thing. I was like, I'm going to need something bigger than that. And he just looks at me and goes, the kid's like 10 years old behind the counter. He just looked at me and goes, please don't. And I said, no, I flew over here with the goal of putting an old dirt bike in the back of something. And so he's like, I have something. So he rolls up in a 15-passenger van and is like, let's take the seats out. So I was like, all right, dude. But it didn't hit me till he leaves. Like, we drive on, like, steering wheels on the other side, driving on the other side. So, like, imagine you show up in America in, like, a city with a 15-passenger van. And then the first thing you hit is, like, 3 roundabouts outside of the airport. And I was like, oh, man. I'm, like, rolling up to the first one, and it was like, I can't even think about which way to go. Like, I was like, what do you do? And so thank God there was like a car in front of me. And I was like, I'm following this dude for a minute. I was like, whatever he's doing, I'm doing just to survive this. And so cruising around Manchester, I got like 3 parking tickets immediately. Saved all of them, by the way. They look awesome. Your parking tickets are kind of cool. And so I got like 3 parking tickets right off the jump. I was really glad when I got to Kendal because I could just like leave it in a corner of a parking lot and was like, all right, I'm out with this 15-passenger van. But what I realized was nobody was very interested in my cowboy idea of sell me your dirt bike. I'm going to go rip it around for a while. That was not a popular idea. So the 15-passenger ended up being my ride. That was the adventure. Was like I got the worst vehicle imaginable for me. I thought in that moment, but I was like, yeah, it was yeah. Manchester's not like a wide city. It's not like. That wasn't something that I was gifted with this journey. So it was cool. It was a very cool experience. But yeah, I understood all the pre-warning messages, Clive, after I got that. I was like, I get what's going on here.
Yeah, I didn't want to put you off because it still could have happened, but it just felt very fucking unlikely. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. No, it is. Knowing what I know now, it definitely was.
So let's talk about riding in Nebraska, because you can do that in Nebraska. I mean, it's huge prairie fields. You got dirt tracks. Can you pretty much go where you want?
Yeah. So there's multiple ways to look at it. There's your trails and there's those opportunities. But the thing about prairie is like you have farmland. I mean, you all have that. It's just I think in Nebraska, some folks have so much farmland that it's like check the cows is a long ways away. Check the irrigation pivot is a long ways away. And so 4-wheelers, side-by-sides, dirt bikes, like those things are things that are just kind of like a big part of the culture in the Midwest. And then the folks in the Midwest who travel, they want to take those toys with them. So you drive to Wisconsin to go ride, but Wisconsin people drive to Nebraska. And so it's very much kind of like that culture, but you'll catch a farmer or some like public land where you can just ride wherever you want. And it's just wide open. And like that is a feeling that is unlike anything else. And you have those moments when you're in certain places where you can just you can go where you want to go and it's sort of your decision. And it's in those moments where you're like dodging prairie dog holes and like cow tracks and things like that, where you're like your plants and things and you're like really truly kind of in the wild. It's a different kind of free, it's a different kind of experience on our bikes. Like everybody knows a motorcycle is a freedom machine. The fun part is to be in some of these, like the most empty place where a hospital is hours away. Humanity is as far away as you get. It's hard to find that in your everyday life. And so sometimes just being in the middle of nowhere where there isn't even a trail is like, is a lot of fun. And Nebraska's, the mountains aren't huge. One of our famous poets quote is, anyone can love the mountains, but it takes a soul to love the prairie. Because like, it's not like I said, it's not on the hit list of places to visit in America very often.
Your film, Prairie Pirates, which is freely available on YouTube, the film leaves you drifting down a river on a raft with your broken dirt bike. Is there going to be a part 2?
My goal with the short film was not to have a real beginning or a real end. And the dream was always so that if the opportunity came up, I could make a second one and kind of pick that story up somewhere else. And so saved the raft, saved the bike, saved the outfit, saved the hat. The reason that shirt is so long was because I walked into this store called The Fort and was like, oh, 2 extra large shirts. So I just grabbed them and bought them. Then when we got out to the middle of nowhere, they were extra large, extra long. And I was like, damn it. It's like, you're going to look, so that's why they're just massive shirts. I was like, what the hell is this? Who even, yeah. So anyway, it was like, but saved the extra large, extra long shirts. Like I even have that, but I saved it all. And I have some really interesting ideas and access to what I would say is another river style scenario. And so I'm hoping to do it, but I'm, because of the opportunity in Lisbon, Fuel TV was there, which is cool. And so got a chance to have a conversation with some folks over there. And so I'm actually putting together a pitch deck to shoot a concept around a show that's a lot like what we did with Jim, but just do that on a global level, like find the collectors and the bikes they love and then see if we can get it started back up and take it for one last ride. You know what I mean? And see, like, sometimes you make it, sometimes you probably don't make it out of the parking lot, but it's like, can we give it a good old go? And so what's fun about it is the gyms of the world are so interesting, but you got to find stories that are also like different beats and hits in the TV and movie world. So it can't just be, if it's going to be a movie, it's got to be a lot of other characters. And so I'm very interested in this idea of the old bikes that still exist and getting this next generation of kid and Jim to have those moments where like the old guard and the new guard can connect and see the value of it. And just like the learning to turn a wrench in a garage, but also listen to an old story. It was like an experience that's as old as time. Stories passed down like that is as old as time.
Was that a yes or a no?
I'm a politician. That was a we shall see. I'm like Neo in the Matrix.
What was the at the start of your film and midway through the film, you're standing on top of a small hill and there's like a howling coyote silhouette. What's that? Who's that about? What's that represent?
So out in the middle of the far, like as far west as you can get in Nebraska, right before you get to Wyoming. So like I've seen this because I've skated past it. There's this like howling coyote statue that's like, that's why like the howling sound that we make throughout the film is like the coyote howling. We like went and found something that sounded it. But that's actually Chris's backyard. So like the vintage collector, the other guy, like I shit you not, I was like, that is perfect. And so I was like, I didn't know the howling coyote statue was there until we got to Chris's house. And I was like, oh, we're using that in the film. We saw the statue first and then we filmed the scene with Brady second. So like I was able to be like, oh, we're going to add the like, where should we meet? Like we'll meet at that because it was kind of cool. And so that became the scene, but I'd never seen it. Like, I didn't think about it until we got out there and then we went and saw Chris's thing and I was like, oh, we're right by this. Like, I didn't even think about it. So I was like, that's so dope. We're using it for the film. This is something I've never told anyone, not even the film guys. So I feel bad even saying this, but I'm going to say it now because I got to get it off my chest. So we're like filming this and some dude whose property we are clearly probably on comes walking up to us to let us know that we are driving vehicles and filming scenes and cameras are now like sort of on his property because it's Chris's backyard, but it was like, maybe a little suspect who owns the land around this howling coyote. And so a lot of land, wasn't sure. Guy comes up, it's clearly his. He's got a dirt bike track. You can see that he's built for his kids in his backyard. Like they're not bummed. They're like stoked for the whole thing. And then we're like, yeah, we're all wrapping up. We're all done. And he's like, yeah, that's great. And he's like, I was going to also say, this is like, there's like a rattlesnake den up here, right? And I was like, excuse me? And he's like, oh yeah, they're everywhere. And I was like, interesting. I was like, come on, guys, we're out of here. And so we like leave. We get down and I'm like, oh my God. And so I was like, you've got to be shitting me. And so like we get down and I'm like talking to one of our guys and I was like, hey, bro, I was like, he said that, like one of them, like, he said there was like maybe a rattlesnake's den. And the one guy's like, I swear to God, I thought I heard something. And I was like, Jesus. No way. And I was like, do not tell me that. Like, on this uninsured bootlegged film we're making on somebody else's property. Like, I don't want to hear any of that. But swear to God, apparently, from what I hear from the locals, right below that howling coyote statue, they've got a rattlesnake problem. And we got in and got out unscathed, but that one was one of those like sketchy moments where like sometimes flying by the seat of your pants is not always the best move, guys. But yeah, found that out thankfully we didn't find it out the hard way. But yeah, when he told me that, I was like, we couldn't get out of there fast enough.
Fuck that. I fucking hate snakes.
Oh yeah. I wish you guys could have checked out the one in Italy, the cinematic MotoFest.
Yeah, was it good?
They did a good job at that one. Of all of the ones that I've kind of been at and like did, what they did was they did a really good job. They made like there was like the place you watch the film, you know, and that went down, and then they had like the director's lounge. It was like this other little spot that was very small, and something to go do in between time. Like in the in-between session where like, you know, you had people drinking in one spot doing things. Yeah. It was like they kind of had it sectioned off. But what they did that I thought was really cool, and what was the categories, like the fiction, short, long, like things like that. And we were in the short fiction category. And so like the film from Germany that was in the one in Lisbon was in the festival, and her film was in it. It was great. Then there was another film about like the little rally cars, you know, and I think it was in Italian. Great film. And this other film comes on, and it starts like shooting from the back seat, and you can see the back of like the driver's head and the passenger's head, and like the pendulum, the like thing in the rearview mirror swinging to the beat of the music, and it's great. Like it's a great start. And then they look over, and she's like something like, "Do you think it's dead?" And they like open the door, get out of the car, and come around, and it's like a realistic dog. It's like hit and bleeding, but like slowly breathing, but like a real dog. And then he like leans over, puts his hand on the dog. Dog stops breathing. So they like look at each other, and they're like, "Oh my God!" And they like have their crisis moment. And she's like, "Does it have a collar?" And it's like Molly. And then it's like, "Does Molly have like? Is there like a number on the back?" So he's like, "Yeah." So he calls the number, and it's like, "Hey, we found your dog. Like, it's on the side of the road, or we can bring it to you." And so he's like, "Yeah, I know, I'll find it." So he hangs up, and they get in the car, and she's like, "You know, you didn't really tell him you hit the dog. You said you found the dog. That wasn't very clear." And he's like, "No, I think he knows." And she's like, "But like, he doesn't. Like, you didn't say it." So they kind of have like this like back and forth for a while. And he's like, "Well, I'll make it clear." So he pulls up. He's got like blood from the dog on his shirt. He's like, "Stay here so that doesn't get weird." And the camera stayed in the car so you don't get to hear the conversation. So he like takes the dog up, gives him to the guy. They kind of talk, shakes hands, gets back in the car, shuts the door. And she's like, "Did you tell him?" And he's like, "He knows." And she's like, "No, but like, did you tell him?" And she's like, "I'm pretty sure he knows." So she gets out of the car, storms over to the guy, and is like, "Hey, we're so sorry we hit your dog. We just wanted you to know we hit your dog. Like, did you know we did it?" And he's like, old farm guy. And he just looks at her and goes, "You think I thought your bumper came like that?" And she like turns around and looks, and like the bumper's bent. And then he just goes, "Drive safe." And she gets in the car. Yeah. She gets in the car, shuts the door, and he's like, I'm sorry, and apologizes. And the movie ends. But then the credits roll. And what is the one song of all songs in the history of songs involving dogs that you cannot play in that moment, that nobody would play in that moment? Who Let the Dogs Out? I swear to God, you guys.
That's great.
It ends, and you're sitting there, and you're like, and then all of a sudden it just goes, "Who let the dogs out?" And I'm in the theater like, no fucking way. There's no way. And no. But I think everybody's initial thought was like, what? No, like not. It was such a tension-filled, those two, dead dog, that guy, like nothing, so much tension. And then to let us off the hook with "Who Let the Dogs Out?" Wow. I couldn't even, I was like, there's so many emotions I had, but I get to tell everybody, like, I took the greatest, they won best film. So I'm like, I got the greatest loss story of all time. I had the greatest L. I lost to Baha Men and Who Let the Dogs Out in the greatest like cinematic short film. But yeah, no, it was unbelievable.
You shouldn't take it as you didn't win, because you've won 4 times now. Getting selected is massive.
Totally. But you know what I mean? Everybody was like, did you win any of them is what everyone's asking. I'm like, I have the greatest story. You're not going to believe this story. But to tell people about Who Let the Dogs Out has been a fantastic asterisk if you're not going to win the thing. But yeah, it's so funny.
Yeah,
It was so
that's
funny.
ace. Brilliant.
When you find yourself out in the middle of nowhere, out of service, out of gas, and out of road, it doesn't mean that you're out of ideas. It means that you're living that one story you'll tell a million times. And it's in that moment I'm always reminded of my favorite Hunter S. Thompson quote. Life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, "Holy shit, what a ride."
Left all my burdens in a cloud of smoke, buried my sorrows under